Most people don't realize just how powerful their words are, especially the ones they say to themselves. They go through life on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts, reinforcing the same beliefs, and never questioning whether the things they tell themselves are actually true. But here's the reality. Your mind is always listening. Every word, every phrase, every casual self-criticism seeps into your subconscious and shapes the way you see yourself and the world around you. If you wake up every morning and the first thing you think is, I'm tired, I'm not good at this, my life isn't where I want it to be, what do you think happens? You program yourself for struggle before the day even begins. Your mind says, all right, if that's what we're doing, then let's feel exhausted. Let's notice every single flaw. Let's reinforce the idea that nothing ever changes. And so, without even realizing it, you walk through your day proving yourself right. You hesitate instead of taking action. You see problems instead of opportunities. You reinforce the very limitations you desperately want to escape from. But what happens if you flip the script? What happens if for just 3 days you make a conscious decision to speak to yourself differently? You wake up and instead of immediately focusing on what's wrong, you say, I am strong. I am in control. I am capable of handling whatever today brings. At first, it might feel strange, even forced, but that's only because your mind has spent years listening to a different story, and now, for the first time, you're telling it something new. The interesting thing about the human brain is that it doesn't care whether the things you say to yourself are true or not. It just takes whatever you repeat the most and assumes that's reality. This is why self-talk is so incredibly powerful. When you tell yourself something often enough, your brain starts looking for evidence to support it. If you keep saying, I always mess up, then every mistake, every setback will be magnified in your mind. But if you say, I'm learning, I'm getting stronger, I am growing every day, your brain will begin to notice the progress you're making, the small victories, the proof that you are moving forward. Some people hear this and think, well, that sounds nice, but isn't that just lying to myself? No. What you've been telling yourself before, the idea that you're not enough, that you'll never succeed, that you can't change, that was the lie. The truth is that you are far more capable than you give yourself credit for. You've simply been reinforcing the wrong narrative. Imagine two people facing the exact same challenge. One tells themselves, this is impossible, I'll never get through this. The other says, this is tough, but I'll figure it out. Which one do you think actually finds a way forward? Not because the second person is more talented or smarter, but because they refuse to let their own words become their enemy. They've decided that if their mind is always listening, then they might as well make sure it hears something useful. And this is where everything changes. The moment you realize that you have a say in what kind of thoughts dominate your mind, you take back control. No longer are you a victim of self-doubt, a prisoner of your past conditioning. You start to recognize just how much influence you actually have over your own reality. Now, does this mean you'll feel unstoppable overnight? Of course not. But if you commit, just for 3 days, to shifting the way you speak to yourself, you will notice a difference. You'll feel yourself standing taller, making decisions with more confidence, and approaching challenges with a mindset that says, I am capable. And when you experience that shift, even in the smallest way, you'll realize something profound. You've had this power all along. And if you have it for 3 days, then you have it for a lifetime. You might think 3 days isn't enough time to change anything, but that's where you'd be wrong. 3 days is enough time to break the cycle. It's enough time to interrupt the constant stream of self-doubt and negativity that's been running on repeat in your mind for years. And once you break that cycle, even for a moment, you start to see something you couldn't before. The possibility that you can actually rewrite the entire script. Most people never challenge the way they speak to themselves. They assume that their thoughts are just reflections of reality rather than recognizing that their thoughts are actually shaping reality. If you constantly tell yourself that you're a failure, then you're going to behave like one. You'll hesitate when you should act. You'll second guess yourself when you should trust your instincts. You'll avoid opportunities because you've already convinced yourself you're not good enough to take them. But the moment you change the conversation in your head, everything else starts to change with it. This isn't some vague motivational nonsense. It's basic psychology. The words you say to yourself influence your emotions influence your actions, and your actions determine the course of your life. So if you shift the words, you shift the entire trajectory. For 3 days, commit to speaking to yourself like the strongest, most capable version of you. It doesn't matter if you don't feel that way yet. Say the words anyway. I am in control. I am resilient. I am someone who finds solutions instead of problems. At first, your mind might resist. It will try to pull you back into old patterns, old doubts, old fears, but your mind works on repetition. The more you tell it something, the more it accepts it as truth. Think about it. Every negative belief you have about yourself was planted there through repetition. Maybe someone told you you're not smart enough and you believed it. Maybe you've spent years telling yourself, I'll never be successful, and now it feels like a fact. But it's not a fact. It's just a story you've told yourself too many times. And if repetition is all it takes to create a belief, then repetition is all it takes to change one. For 3 days, you are going to challenge every single negative thought that tries to creep in. If you catch yourself saying, I can't do this, you immediately correct it. I am figuring this out. If your mind tries to tell you, nothing ever works out for me, you override it. I create my own success. You don't entertain limiting thoughts. You don't give them space to grow. You replace them before they take root. And something incredible happens when you do this. You start to feel different. Maybe not all at once, but you'll notice it in small ways. You'll feel yourself standing a little taller. You'll take action on things you would have avoided before. You'll start to notice opportunities instead of obstacles. Because when you talk to yourself like someone who is capable, you start to act like someone who is capable. And when you act like someone who is capable, you become someone who is capable. Most people wait until they feel confident before they change the way they speak to themselves. But that's the mistake. Confidence isn't what comes first. Belief is. You have to believe it before you see it. You have to tell yourself, I am strong, before you feel strong. You have to say, I am successful before you have the proof, because belief comes before action, and action is what creates the results. This is the challenge. 3 days, no negative self-talk, no self-doubt running unchecked, no reinforcing old destructive narratives, just 3 days of speaking to yourself like someone who is disciplined, capable, and worthy of success. And I promise you this, if you do it for 3 days, you won't want to stop. Because you'll realize that the only thing that's ever held you back was the way you spoke to yourself. And if you can change that, you can change everything. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you're reinforcing beliefs about yourself. You're telling your mind a story about who you are, what you're capable of, and what your future holds. And that story is being written through your words, through the things you repeatedly say to yourself. The problem is most people aren't consciously choosing that narrative. They've adopted it without question, shaped by past experiences, failures, or the voices of others who told them who they were supposed to be. And because they've repeated those thoughts for years, they assume them to be true. But what if that story isn't accurate? What if the version of yourself you've been reinforcing isn't the full picture? What if your potential, your strength, your intelligence has been buried under years of negative self-talk? And what if, for the first time, you took control of that inner dialogue and rewrote it? This is where affirmations come in. And no, I'm not talking about standing in front of a mirror, mindlessly repeating empty phrases. I'm talking about something far more powerful. Deliberately choosing words that challenge the limitations you've placed on yourself. Speaking to yourself in a way that reinforces the person you are becoming rather than the person you've been. Your brain operates on patterns. It doesn't care whether a thought is helpful or destructive. It simply takes whatever you repeat the most and strengthens that neural pathway. So if you constantly say, I'm not good at this, your brain will go to work proving you right. If you say, I always mess things up, your mind will highlight every mistake you make as evidence. But the opposite is also true. If you say, I am capable, I am learning, I am growing, your brain starts to search for proof of that reality as well. And this is the shift. For the next 3 days, you are going to reprogram your mind with affirmations that serve you, not just words you say, but words you embody. When you wake up in the morning, you don't let your first thought be one of stress or doubt. You say, today I am in control, today I take action, today I move forward. When you face a challenge, you don't default to frustration. You say, I solve problems. I rise to the occasion. I am strong under pressure. And when that voice of self-doubt creeps in, the one that says, who are you to think you can do this? You silence it immediately. I am more than enough. I have everything I need to succeed. At first, it may feel unnatural. That's because your mind is used to the old programming. It's like stepping onto a path you've never walked before. Of course it feels unfamiliar, but with each repetition, you carve out a new route, a new way of thinking, a new way of being. And here's what's remarkable. When you start speaking these affirmations with certainty, when you say them not as wishful thinking, but as declarations of truth, you'll notice something shift inside you. You'll feel more aligned with the person you're becoming. You'll start making decisions that match your words. You'll take action that reflects your new mindset. Because affirmations aren't just about what you say, they're about what you do after you say them. Imagine two people side by side facing the same obstacle. One says, "This is impossible. I'm not cut out for this." The other says, "I can figure this out. I always do." Who do you think finds a way forward? Who do you think perseveres, pushes through, refuses to be defeated? It's not about talent or luck. It's about the internal conversation they're having with themselves. And that's what this is about. For 3 days, you're going to make a choice. You're going to speak to yourself in a way that builds you up, not tears you down. You're going to replace every old limiting belief with words that reinforce your strength, your resilience, your ability to create change. And when you do that, when you commit to speaking life into your future, you will feel something powerful take hold inside you, a shift, a spark, a realization that you've been carrying this strength all along. And once you see that, once you feel it, you'll never go back to the way things were before. People spend far too much time talking to themselves about the past. They replay mistakes, they dwell on regrets, they remind themselves over and over of the times they failed, the times they were rejected, the times things didn't go the way they wanted. And they don't just remember these things. They build their identity around them. They say, "I've always been this way. I never get it right. That's just who I am." But that's a dangerous way to think. Because the moment you define yourself by your past, you lock yourself into it. You reinforce the idea that who you were is the same as who you have to be. But it's not. Who you were is simply a reflection of your past choices, your past actions, your past thoughts. And all of that can change. The problem is most people don't shift their self-talk toward the future. They don't speak to themselves as the person they are becoming. They speak to themselves as the person they were, and then they wonder why nothing ever changes. You need to ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to create? And if you can answer that, then you have to start speaking as if you're already on that path. You have to talk to yourself as if you are already becoming that person. Not in some delusional make-believe way, but as a realignment of your focus, a recalibration of your identity. Instead of saying, "I always mess things up," you say, "I am learning to handle challenges with confidence." Instead of saying, "I'm not the kind of person who succeeds," you say, "I am becoming someone who follows through, who shows up, who refuses to quit." Every time you catch yourself reinforcing an old limiting belief, you stop it in its tracks and you replace it with something that moves you forward. Because the words you use today determine the direction you take tomorrow. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about speaking in a way that aligns with your potential rather than your past. When an athlete trains for a competition, they don't sit there saying, "I've never won before, so I probably never will." No, they say, "I am getting stronger. I am getting faster. I am preparing for victory." They speak into their future because they understand something fundamental. The mind follows the words it hears most often. And if you keep talking about your limitations, your mind will make sure they remain real. But if you keep talking about your growth, your potential, your ability to figure things out, then your mind will start working in your favor instead of against you. And this is where it gets interesting. When you shift to future-driven self-talk, something changes inside you. You start making different choices. You start noticing opportunities that you would have ignored before. You start moving in the direction of the words you're saying because you've given your mind a new target to aim for. Instead of reinforcing old patterns, you're carving out new ones. People don't fail because they lack talent or intelligence. They fail because they don't give themselves permission to grow into the next version of themselves. They let their past define them. They let their old mistakes, their old fears, their old habits dictate what they believe is possible. And because they believe they're stuck, they stay stuck. But that doesn't have to be your story. You can rewrite it. You can take control of the way you speak to yourself. You can choose words that push you forward instead of pulling you back. For 3 days, try this. Anytime you talk to yourself, make sure it's in the direction of where you want to go, not where you've been. If you want to be more disciplined, say, I am becoming more disciplined every day. If you want to be more confident, say, I am stepping into confidence with every challenge I face. If you want to be stronger, say, I am building resilience with every obstacle I overcome. Because the truth is, you are always becoming something. The only question is whether you're becoming stronger or weaker, better or worse, more capable or more limited. And that answer is determined by the words you choose to repeat day after day. Choose wisely, because your future depends on it. Most people don't realize how much damage they do to themselves with the words they use every day. They think it's just talk, just thoughts, just passing comments, nothing to take too seriously. But that's not how the mind works. Your mind is always listening, always absorbing, always adjusting to match the language you use. And if that language is filled with doubt, with weakness, with limitation, then that's exactly what you'll experience in your life. Listen to how people speak about themselves. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. They say these things without thinking, as if they're stating facts. But these aren't facts, they're choices. They're habits of speech that become habits of belief. And the problem with believing these things is that your brain will work tirelessly to prove you right. If you tell yourself you're terrible at something, your mind won't even bother looking for solutions. It will shut down before you have a chance to improve. If you say, I'm always unlucky, you'll only notice the things that go wrong, reinforcing the very idea that's keeping you stuck. You build the walls of your own prison, one word at a time, and then you wonder why you feel trapped. So for the next 3 days, you're going to do something different. You're going to eliminate every single piece of negative language from your vocabulary. No more saying, I can't. No more, I'm not good enough. No more reinforcing self-imposed limits. Every time you catch yourself speaking negatively about yourself, you stop immediately. And then you replace it. This doesn't mean you lie to yourself. It means you reframe your words in a way that actually helps you move forward instead of holding you back. Instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, you say, I'm still learning. Instead of, I always fail, you say, I'm getting better with every attempt. Instead of, I'll never figure this out, you say, I'll find a way. It seems small, but it isn't. This shift is monumental because words shape perception and perception shapes reality. If you walk around believing you're stuck, weak, incapable, you will be. But if you start speaking like someone who is learning, growing, and adapting, then suddenly the possibility of change becomes real. The problem is most people have been using negative language for so long that they don't even hear it anymore. They've trained themselves to assume the worst about themselves. And that's a hard habit to break unless you make the conscious decision to stop it in its tracks. So, start paying attention. Listen to yourself. Every time you say something limiting, something that weakens you, take a step back and ask yourself, is this helping me? Is this language making me stronger or weaker? If it's making you weaker, change it. Not later, not tomorrow, right then and there. And here's the fascinating part. When you remove negative language, you remove unnecessary suffering. You stop adding weight to your burdens. You stop reinforcing problems that don't need to exist. You don't waste time convincing yourself that things are worse than they actually are. Instead, you free up that mental energy to focus on solutions, on progress, on moving forward. The world is already filled with challenges. Life is difficult enough as it is. Why make it harder by turning your own words into another obstacle? If you're going to speak to yourself, and you will, because everyone does, you might as well make sure your words are working for you, not against you. You owe yourself that much. Because whether you realize it or not, you are always listening. And the words you choose today will determine who you become tomorrow. Confidence isn't something you wait for. It's not something that magically appears when life finally gives you enough evidence to believe in yourself. Confidence is something you decide. It's something you practice. It's something you embody long before you feel like you deserve to. And that's the mistake most people make. They wait. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until they feel capable. They wait for someone else to tell them they're good enough. But that moment never comes, because confidence isn't built on waiting, it's built on action. So for 3 days, you are going to walk differently. You are going to speak differently. You are going to carry yourself as if you already believe in the person you are becoming. Not because you're pretending, not because you're faking it, but because you are training yourself to see what is already there. Because confidence isn't arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about standing firmly in the belief that you are competent, that you are capable, that you have as much right as anyone else to pursue what matters to you. And the fastest way to build that confidence? Gratitude. Not just gratitude for what you have, but gratitude for who you are becoming. Most people only feel grateful when things are going well. They wait until they have the success, the achievement, the recognition, and then they allow themselves to appreciate it. But that's backwards. Gratitude isn't just about recognizing what you have, it's about recognizing what's possible. It's about appreciating the fact that you are growing, that you are learning, that every step forward, no matter how small, is evidence that you are moving in the right direction. Gratitude and confidence go hand in hand because they shift your focus. When you are grateful, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is lacking, someone who is struggling, someone who is always behind. Instead, you start seeing yourself as someone who is equipped, someone who is learning, someone who already has everything they need to take the next step. And when you see yourself that way, you act accordingly. So for the next 3 days, every time you catch yourself feeling uncertain, every time you doubt yourself, you pause, you straighten your posture, you breathe deeply, and you remind yourself, I have everything I need to handle this moment. And then you find something to be grateful for. Your ability to learn, your resilience, your willingness to keep going even when things are difficult. Because the more you focus on what you have, the less power your doubts will have over you. You don't become confident by accident. You become confident by choice, by speaking to yourself as someone who is capable, by carrying yourself as someone who is worthy, by shifting your focus from what you lack to what you already possess. And when you do that, when you fully commit to seeing yourself in that way, you will realize something life-changing. The only thing that was ever missing was your own belief in yourself. To shift the narrative that has been running on autopilot in your mind. To stop reinforcing old limitations and start building a new, stronger foundation. And if you do this, if you truly commit to it, you will realize just how much control you have over the direction of your life. Because your words are not just words. They are instructions to your mind. They shape your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and ultimately your reality. Every time you choose to speak with intention, to replace negativity with possibility, to affirm the person you are becoming rather than the person you used to be, you are taking back control. So don't underestimate this. Don't brush it off as some trivial exercise. The way you talk to yourself is the single most powerful factor in determining what you achieve, how you handle adversity, and whether you rise or stay stuck. If you speak as someone who is learning, growing, and capable, you will act accordingly. If you carry yourself with confidence and gratitude, you will attract more reasons to be confident and grateful. 3 days, that's all it takes to prove to yourself that you are not bound by the past, that you are capable of rewiring the way you think, that your words have the power to shape a future far greater than anything you've imagined. And once you see that, once you feel it, you'll never go back to the way things were. Because once you realize you are the one writing the story of your life, you won't settle for anything less than a story worth telling.